So today, for this new week, I'm really happy to receive Aaron Block, so the co-founder and the managing director at MetaProp, and Maureen Waters, the new partner of MetaProp. Yeah, Maureen, perfect. Please, the mic is yours for the next 20 minutes, and I'll come back to you with the question.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the great opportunity. So I'll start, Maureen. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Yeah, so I'm Aaron Block. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of MetaProp. As many of you may know, we are one of the top real estate technology or PropTech investors based in New York City. We have 13 people based just south of Times Square in a space called PropTech Place that when the world opens back up, we welcome all of you into our offices soon. A summary of MetaProp briefly, we are by far the top investor in early stage PropTech. We've done 122 investments over the past 10 years as an investment team across the entire real estate value chain, across all asset types, and across all types of technologies, software, marketplaces, SaaS, hardware, tech-enabled services, and digitally native real estate businesses. In some cases, we have invested outside of North America, including London, Barcelona, Tel Aviv, but primarily our focus is on incredible young and growing companies and great entrepreneurs based in the United States and Canada. Our investors with whom we invest, our own capital, are the biggest names in the property business from Asia, Europe, and North America. They own and manage 15 billion square feet around the world, which gives us a fabulous opportunity to share great new technologies with the property industry globally. In addition to our investment efforts and connecting early stage technology with real estate industry, we also do quite a bit in the community. We are the ones who founded New York City Real Estate Tech Week and propelled by MIPIM New York a few years ago, which we're very excited about for this coming year in November, as soon as the world gets a little bit easier. We are also publishers of global thought leadership with the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors and the Real Estate Board of New York. That research is called the Global PropTech Confidence Index. The next edition will be out in 2 months, which should be a very, very interesting a new wave of information about the health of our industry. And we also run the MetaProp Accelerator at Columbia University, which is a startup accelerator program with the university based in New York that just graduated in February, its 7th cohort of startups. So we're very active in the global community. We're very proud to be partners with MIPIM and Reed MIDIM, and we help lead the global startup competition. And we're very happy to be here with you today to introduce our new partner and have a conversation. Maureen, would you like to share more about you and your background?
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. And thank you all for having me. I'm very excited to be part of your webinar. Maureen Waters, I joined MetaProp just almost 30 days ago now, and joined from a startup called 10X, which is a transactional platform where you can buy and sell real estate online. Prior to 10X, I spent some time heading real estate for Bill Gates' investment arm, which took me out of New York to Seattle for a while, and then Seattle to San Francisco. But starting off in New York with CBRE, and then I spent some time there after CBRE acquired a small real estate consulting startup that then moved into their core business on the corporate services side. Then moved on to Cushman & Wakefield, where I spent the longest part of my career working in many different capacities, from chief marketing officer to chief strategy officer to broker for a while, as well as running enterprise accounts. So happy to be joining MetaProp and heading back to New York.
Well, it's a great honor to have Maureen join us as a partner in New York and in San Francisco. And I cannot wait the continued improvement and growth of our business that you're bringing. And speaking of, Maureen, as a question and answer session, which we thought would be most helpful to our international audience today, how has your journey across all of these interesting aspects of the real estate business helped prepare you for this role as a venture capitalist now?
What I'm very excited about, well, it's prepared me in many ways. One, in that I've been, not only have I created a startup at the very beginning of my career that was acquired by CBRE, but I also ran a mid-stage startup that was sold to private equity and was a unicorn. So kind of done one end to the other, and then everything in between, more on the industry side though, and from strategy to helping, you know, accelerate a business to actually the restructuring in the last downturn. So I've kind of I've had a journey across the whole spectrum.
Yeah. And we've always had such a passion and interest in startups. When you were at 10X, we would speak about this. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, Maureen and I have known each other for 20 years now, and just have such a great relationship for so long. So, you know, it's always been so important for us to really focus on helping startups achieve their dreams, to help these entrepreneurs access capital and access customers and grow. And so, you know, you coming over, like, how do you expect to use your unique experiences and brand of success to help supercharge PropTech startups growth in the MetaProp community?
So I think there are two things that I think would be very helpful. One is just spending time with the startups in this new world that we're living in, and understanding, you know, kind of whether they're headed down the right path for growth, whether they need to slightly modify their path, whether, you know, we can help in providing, you know, strategy or you know, operational support to help them continue down their growth path. And on the other side of that is really understanding our strategic partners and their needs and their ability to invest in the tech that's required. And so it's kind of the meeting in the middle of the two that allows both the portfolio companies to accelerate growth, but also the strategic partners to also improve upon their businesses through this technology that they wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I think this added arrow in our quiver here to help these startups should really be helpful for their growth, and in turn for our funds, and ultimately indirectly for our limited partners. So can you talk a little bit about accelerating MetaProp's growth and your thoughts about that? We've you know, it's an interesting time to talk about success and growth in a tough COVID-19 environment, certainly. But what are your thoughts around kind of accelerating the global growth of PropTech and MetaProp right now?
So from that standpoint, I've always been very passionate about innovation. And I think at times like this, what separates the winners from the losers are those that stay focused on innovation, knowing that, you know, you may have to limit your investment, but that reducing it to zero is not an option. But really continuing to build and understand that those that continue to invest in the innovation throughout this period will end up being the winners in the long run. And so really spending time understanding those global investors that are looking to continue to grow and accelerate their innovation in a time like this, where there are so many opportunities, much more than we had, you know, 6 months ago, a year ago, to help accelerate growth.
Yeah, it seems like a good audience to be talking to, and I'm sure there may be some questions. I see friends on the list of attendees from China, from Canada, from Japan, and certainly across Europe and North America. So I'm sure we can get back to this topic as we get into the Q&A here. Maureen, you know, the world has changed quite a bit. We talk about this with our startups, and we talk about this quite a bit internally with our MetaProp team. But what are you most excited about after COVID? That, you know, when we come out of this as a global community in the prop tech world and as a real estate community internationally, what really gets you excited about growth after the crisis?
Well, for me, it's, you know, I started my career in a world at CNW where we had actually, you may remember, Aaron, we had actually a partnership with Goldman Sachs to build and automate the transaction platform.
I didn't remember that. Tell us more. Did that work?
It was under Tom Falucci. He had kind of this Skunk Works thing going, and Goldman Sachs had invested and CW invested. And of course, the brokers were very unhappy about it. And so after a few years of not getting, you know, adoption, you know, it just kind of fizzled out. And so what excites me most, and the big reason I went to 10X, you know, most recently was that I really want to see this adoption happen. And so, you know, having spent a lot of years in the industry, I am so committed to helping accelerate the growth and adoption of tech. And so it was really that that got me most excited, because in times like this, it's when we're starting to see the real acceleration that could take years to happen otherwise, right? And so the next year, I'm very excited to watch very closely on the things that were started some of these 2, 3, 4 years ago, when you're looking at virtual tours or remote access to buildings or touchless access, you know, that we started after 9/11, right? And it's still now starting to really accelerate. I'm excited about tenant and vendor communication platforms that allow, you know, the you know, really, you know, streamless access to both. And then just the quality of office environments, from clean air to wellness to the automation of the hygiene. All of those, I think, are all in the acceleration bucket for me. Which is exciting. But outside of that, the thing that really excites me most are the new things that happens at times of change like this. And one of the things that I'm hoping, you know, and what I'm seeing, and I think all of you, from what I'm hearing from others, is this going back to the core family, that the core nucleus of what we all, you know, live in, you know, work every day around is our family, right? And you're starting to see, you know, that this, in this crisis, that there are more families coming together and resetting, and the core, and you know, having everyone working from home actually accelerates that. And so I'm thinking that there could be a possibility where there's more of a multi-generational family living environment moving forward with the economy shifting, and that could have a profound impact on, you know, someone that, you know, me living with my son and my mother in maybe a community that allows for both. And so, you know, I haven't seen anything like that, but I'm excited that this possibility. I think the urban centers that were the core of everything last decade could shift back to the suburban environment. I think it's a possibility. And that, you know, creating those types of communities where you could work from anywhere around the globe, right, is pretty exciting to me.
Wow, it really resonates with me, some of the things you're talking about and some of your perspective. You know, I think most of the folks who are on this presentation and webinar probably have some idea that some of our other partners, like Zach, have very strong opinions on what's going to be happening in the world. But some of what you said really resonates with me, and I appreciate hearing more of that perspective, and a first chance really for us to share that, you know, particularly the intergenerational side of what you're talking about. Little known fact about Aaron Block, and pretty much everything's already known, as you guys know, we're fairly exposed in the world, but I'm not the first person in my family to have published a book. Interestingly enough, you see the background is the PropTech 101. My grandmother actually is one of the world's leading researchers and speakers around intergenerational family dynamics, particularly grandparenting and grandchildren and the connections between the two, and the living situation. And she wrote a book called Grand Friendships, for any of you that are interested, finding that on Amazon. Don't Cheat the Children. Grand Friendships by Helene Blockfields. So you guys can all take a look at that. But I think that absolutely plays into what you're saying about the future of the post-COVID world. And that certainly really resonates with me. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to digress and shamelessly plug my grandmother's book. She'd be very proud if she was up this early in Arizona listening. Let's move on to Next FM. Come on. So where were you, Maureen, during the last downturn? I think a lot of people will benefit from your wisdom and experiences here. And what tactics of getting through this did you find most useful? And what can you share with the group about lessons learned?
Thank you. Yes. So in 2008, 2009, if that's the where we're starting, I was at Cushman & Wakefield. I had just come out of a transformation exercise to really focused on increasing the firm's profitability. At the time, it was one of the lowest profitabilities in the industry. So at that point, had taken the profitability from 3 to 7%. The downturn started, and the firm had just been acquired by private equity Italians, Exor, and so we started moving through a restructuring. And for my career, that was the first big restructuring that I had been involved in, where we had to take a significant amount of the cost structure out of the business without really impacting revenue.
That's not a lot of fun, is it?
Oh, no, it's not fun at all, because it impacts people, right? CW is a people business, and when you take out that kind of cost out of a business, that's primarily people, and so it impacts folks' lives and their future. And so that was the hardest, I would say, lesson learned. That was the hardest part of that experience, in that I think at that time, because we didn't have the experience we have now, we were less, it was more about accelerating the business and less about taking care of the people. Not that they weren't taken care of. I don't mean it in that way, but it feels to me this new world we're living in is a much stronger world from the standpoint of family, work, and friend network, and taking care of each other and making sure everybody's okay. And there seems to be a lot more giving than I recall in the last downturn. So whether it's big, large corporations or the government or others, everyone seems to be contributing for the to help. And
yeah, it seems like we're all kind of in it together this time, a little bit differently, if I'm understanding you, than the last time around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a financial way as well. I think you see a lot more folks donating to specific causes, or helping neighbors, or working with food banks and such. And so while it was much more structural for me last time in 2008, and helping really build a business model that was less dependent on, costs that were direct, but more indirect, as we would be in this downturn as well. I think that just my biggest takeaway would be, while those are very important in this downturn as well, that I think that there's a lot of kind of embracing of the family and the friends and the network and the spatial component of things that we see today that we didn't see last time.
Mm-hmm. I want to kind of take us and open up for questions in a minute or two, but I thought there's one thing that you and I haven't talked about that you might be interested in sharing a little bit about. Because we've been friends for a long time and colleagues and now working together for a few weeks, but diversity, inclusion is really important to us, and I know it's really important to you personally. And at MetaProp, we talk about our core values: diversity, integrity, affordability, and sustainability, and entrepreneurship, and diversity being front and center. And you being one of the top women executives in the space, now one of the top female venture capitalists. Can you talk a little bit about how you have led others who maybe are from underrepresented groups to be successful in your different areas of expertise over the years? Like what have you done? What has worked? And what can you share with this world to help inspire some of them to learn from your experiences?
Sure, I'm happy to. So I think where I had the greatest learnings was coming out of Cushman and Wakefield, where I was the only female on the executive team for many years and the only youngest member and female on the board. And so I'd say my learning came from, from that environment where it was really survival and working very hard to survive and understand how to work through that, to then taking that and mentoring and helping others learn from my experience. And so where I was able to probably have the most impact was around my work at 10X, where I was able to shift the executive team from 80% male to 50% male, 50% female. Had a tremendous impact on our ability to really connect and grow accelerate the business. And not in forced ways, but in really, it's not something you can force. You have to find the most qualified candidate. There's no doubt, but they're out there. It's just, as Erin said, it's having a commitment to diversity that allows you. And I would say the biggest belief that I have is by having diversity sitting around any table where you're brainstorming or setting strategy for the future of a company. It just, the ideas and the flow of different backgrounds and conversation around what the possibilities might be from their experiences there's just nothing like it. It really has allowed me to accelerate growth in areas that I never believed I could. And also, I think the second thing that I would say, Erin, is mentoring is extremely important to me. I spend a lot of time doing it. I had some great mentors myself. And I think that I try to train and teach folks to not be afraid to ask someone to be their mentor and to help them down the path of growing through their career journey. And so I would ask everyone here to be open to reaching out and mentoring folks, but also if you would like a mentor, to not be afraid to ask someone that you respect that has the capabilities in the areas that you want to grow within to help you get there.
Great. Thank you for that. I think, we should let the audience kind of drive the rest of the conversation here in the remaining time that we have, but I'm really happy that everyone's gotten a chance to hear your perspectives and a little bit of the why behind the story of you joining and becoming a partner at MetaProp and helping grow this business full time. So Guillaume, would you like to kind of open it up a bit? Okay, well, why don't we take it then? I didn't hear, maybe he's on mute. So one of the questions is from Massey. How do you see European PropTech space and the leading players today? I guess I can take a stab at that, Maureen. Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
So European PropTech is more exciting than it's ever been from my perspective. First and foremost, we're seeing incredible focus and push on innovation across all geographies. It's not just a UK concept. It's not just a Netherlands concept. It's not just a France concept, but really even from the smallest EU countries to the largest countries, EU and non-EU, with all due respect to the United Kingdom and Russia and some other, really impressive markets. There's a lot of interest, not just now from the real estate community, who are leaning in fact, leaning in more so historically than we've seen the United States and North American real estate industry players, but also the startup community, which I can tell you from having led the global startup competition for the last 5 years, it's been absolutely fabulous to see the level of sophistication and the quality of technology and talent coming into the space. And most recently, I think the element that's interesting to keep an eye on, Massey, is the development of a more well put together venture capital ecosystem in Europe. One of our longtime friends, Taylor Westcote, has kind of been one of the original minds and investors working with his partners to invest out of London. And there have certainly been families and high net worth real estate related organizations leaning in. But over the last 2 years, we've seen really a development of capital, some of it institutionalizing, some of it still getting its footing in the space that gives us even more confidence that Europe will play well. The downside, Massey, of what we see in Europe today, and what is a challenge historically, but will be even more of a challenge, is the separation of the UK and Great Britain from the EU. Certainly, this is over and above any COVID and related crisis. Number one is that's a big step back because there was so much connectivity between capital, in particular, between those two markets, which are now becoming even more distinct. And then number two, the smaller size of the addressable market in Europe, each country having its own set, in many cases, of rules and regulations, makes it a little bit more challenging, particularly in a tough economy, for some of the best startups to grow to the scale necessary to be able to attract the momentum and the interest from investors to continue getting funded and hit their grand scaling goals. So I can tell you that, at least back to our perspective, one organization's perspective, that MetaProp is by and large focused on North American investments right now because there's so much opportunity here. It's the largest addressable market outside of China, obviously, and the ecosystem is so well developed. So I think there's lots of positives about what's happening in Europe today, a bit of emerging issues that need to be dealt with, but overall, much better than it was even 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I'm very excited for the future. And we will be playing a lot more in Europe in the coming days and weeks and months here. So please stay close. Hopefully that answered your question, Massey. Thank you for that. Guillaume, I guess we'll just continue unless you want to jump in with any questions or thoughts. Let's see. We have one from.
I don't know if you can hear me, Aaron.
We can hear you now, Guillaume.
Yeah, great. Finally it works. Sorry, that's definitely trouble with my connection. But anyway, we got a lot of questions. Firstly, thank you for this first part. That was really cool, and I really like this format. We like the great question from Charles. Did you see Charles asked what part of the industry business model is or are being questioned by the crisis from your perspective?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I guess, Maureen, I can start, and if you want to weigh in. So I would say that, one big issue, Charles, that we're seeing, of course, is everybody's struggling in the industry right now with just collecting rent. So you have to, I think everybody needs to take a step back from the grand ambitions of PropTech prior to the crisis and prior to COVID, and reset around how fundamentally our business has changed in the last 3 months, and how the mindset of folks in the practitioner world of property have had to adjust. And that's a really important resetting of all of our expectations when you're just focused on collecting rent and the survivability of your tenants and your occupiers and your guests and your own business model. It really starts to change your thinking around what's important, what's nice to have, and what is a must have. And Maureen and I have a partner Zach Schwarzman, who's very fond of saying that this crisis over the last few weeks, for venture capitalists at least, has made a very important focus on what's important. So his saying is for the deals that you could do, you're not doing those deals anymore. The deals that you should do, you're probably not going to do those deals. But the deals that you need to do are the deals that you're going to get done in this environment. And I think that really applies to many of the aspects of the real estate industry. In areas that we're excited about, that we have seen develop over the last few weeks that have really accelerated some trends. Obviously, we have all been exposed to virtual tours, and that has been slow to commercialize generally, but the crisis has made that more interesting, is just one example. Another example is tenant engagement on the positive side, being able to communicate and interact with occupiers of space using technology, particularly on the residential and build to rent and multifamily side, has been interesting to us. However, on the other side, there are some areas that are really potentially very risky. For example, co-living, short-term rentals, iBuyers. This is all in the multifamily residential space alone. These are asset-heavy, capital-heavy business models have had to really adjust and remain very risky. I'll give you one more set of things that we think are going interestingly and things that we're really concerned about, if that helps illustrate the answer to your question. On the opportunities side for office, for example, keyless entry and access control for building entryways, for elevators, for floors, for private spaces, and for bathrooms is something obviously being accelerated and something that we're excited about. Tech-enabled facilities management, having fewer humans interacting with other humans due to social distancing is very interesting. But on the other side, we see some risks with co-working today, obviously, defining what is really important and must have, back to the Zach Schwarzman paradigm, is really important. And we're not quite sure that what everybody felt before about co-working and human interaction is going to sustain through the crisis. So we think there will be a potentially big shakeout and consolidation that has been inevitable. Those are just two areas that we have been thinking about. And there's many more. We could go into retail and hospitality and other asset types. So we think a lot about that. We write a lot about that and are happy to share more when we have more time.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I've just seen that the time is running out. Would you have time for maybe a last question?
I think it's okay. Maureen, you okay?
Yeah. Great, because there is a really good question from Matthias, who tells that PropTech market are deep niches, very hyper-local. So does it worse for the US PropTech or even for European PropTech to invest abroad, while this finally this local market is usually already weight a lot of money? So is it finally useful to go global? I mean, does the PropTech really needs to be global?
Oh man, what a great question, Matthias. So I have Maureen, may I? I have very strong feelings about this right now. I'm gonna put on my game hat for this answer. Okay. So I have one very important message that I want to share with the PropTech startups in the international markets. Is the number one job right now is to survive. And we tell this to our own entrepreneurs, right? So number one job is to survive and get through not just this initial phase of COVID-19, but any subsequent recurrences, okay? And so therefore managing cash and focusing on the most important, the must-have, to use Zach Schwarzman's paradigm again, is so important. So when I think about globalization of prop tech startups and going to new markets in this environment, I think, well, that's a very, very good question, but that's a very good strategy to be able to talk about, because that must mean that you have absolutely ensured the survival of your prop tech startup through not just this initial few months wave, but through clients being slow to adopt and adapt, whether they're consumers or enterprises, new technologies, whether your accounts receivable from those clients are going to be paid or delayed, whether your team is going to be sick or to be healthy, among many other elements of just surviving as a business. So if you can get past the survival side, and if you can own your local market, then yes, absolutely, that's wonderful to be able to think about global growth. But I think in a time like this right now, it is most important to be very myopic, to focus on survival. If you are one of the fortunate firms that can grow through this, and we have a dozen or so in our portfolio that are doing very well through this, then this is a great time to think about adding human capital, bringing in the best employees and recruits you can in a very difficult labor market environment, particularly in the US right now, but certainly in other markets globally through the recessionary signals that we're seeing. So if you can survive, if you can add great talent, look at us having a chance to bring on Maureen, which is a great example, and then you can continue to grow in your home market, then certainly I would say it makes sense to think about going global. But absent that right now, I don't think that should be on most people's radar. It should be most people's strategic interest. I think the key is to be the best, to be as narrow as possible, to be as strong as possible, and be in a position to hit global growth when the economy and the market recover from this crisis. Maureen, how do you feel about it?
Yes, it's exactly what I think we talked about earlier, Aaron. I would agree with that 100%.
Oh, great! Thank you very much. What I propose to you, Aaron and Maureen, if you agree, is that I can just go to put the questions on the social on our social networks for you to answer the question when you have time, because there are some more, but yeah, just too much for today. Too many questions, sorry. And so again, thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you all for these great questions. And yeah, hope to see you soon. I hope everything will go better soon. And for everyone here, take care.
Yeah, please stay safe, everyone. Guillaume, thank you to you and Nicola and to Filippo for putting on this wonderful series. We look forward to viewing the rest of them that are coming in the coming weeks too.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye.